Praise to you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth, the good news of salvation to his people Israel, to all the peoples through his Son Yeshua the Messiah our Lord. Amen.
Amen. All right. So we had that moment really. Last week we were discussing the different levels of covenant, right? So, as we went back into it, can any of you tell me, let's draw our stories out here. What was our first layer? Abraham. Alright? Built on the foundation. Next layer? Isaac. Next layer? 12. Jacob. Which led us to?
Sana.
Led us to Simon. Right. Okay. We spoke a lot about Genesis 49, the blessings. That led us into what we were going to discuss. And we looked at the signs of Abraham. What was the sign of the covenant program? Circumcision. The sign for Sinai. Shabbat. Right. And we learned that through Galatians 3, that even though the promises of another covenant came lower, right, or came after, it doesn't nullify the first lot of covenants, right? It doesn't nullify the promises of the covenants, that's what it says. Okay? Again, if that were the case, we spoke about Noah, we spoke about Adam. Abraham's would have nullified everything. Okay? Even if we just took it from there. It wouldn't exist. Okay? Now, there were some smaller covenants that you guys could have looked at that happened around the time of Mount Sinai. We spoke about it.
Covenant of salt.
Covenant of salt. Salt covenant. And that represented loyalty. And that was between who?
The Levites and God.
Levites and God. Okay. What other covenants did you pick up? What other did we mention briefly?
That Aaron would be a priest.
Yeah, the
Okay. Covenant with Aaron and his sons.
Yeah.
Okay? And he would have high priesthood. What other covenants? Am I in the way?
No.
It's Sunday afternoon.
Pinchas.
Wayne doesn't want it.
Pinchas. Okay? We're going to come into Pinchas. Pinchas I'm going to put over here because we're going to discuss this a little bit at length. And this was called the
Covenant of peace.
right. Covenant of peace. And we see that alluded in a few other places in Scripture.
Yeah.
What else? It's a pretty easy one. It's about yay big. It's a little ginger fellow. David. Right. So we've got the covenant with David.
But that didn't happen the same
Yeah,
time.
no, that comes a little bit later, but it's just a sub-covenant. So the Davidic. Yeah, the Davidic covenant. Okay, and while we're there, what did that entail? We spoke about it last week.
Part of the Messianic promise.
The scepter will not pass from one side.
That's actually mentioned in Genesis 49.
Yeah.
Right? So because of that, we had the illusion of David being the recipient of this. And we also looked at Genesis 49 when we spoke about two other tribes. Not Judah. Well, there was two other tribes besides Judah. So this was Judah's blessing. The Levites, remember they spoke there would be sprinkled out. And the other one that was absorbed in Judah, Simeon.
Simeon. Shimon.
Okay. So all of these things alluding to what was David's sign, if you remember?
House.
His house. Okay? But it wasn't just his house, it was
God's house.
a house, as in one of his sons, and God's house. He would reign before God. That was part of it. So when we see in scriptures, you will see a reference called God will resurrect the fallen tabernacle of David, the fallen tent of David. All right? There's mention of this at the Davidic king, and this time again, remember that David is a Messiah type, not only in Judah, but also his name is used as a Messianic prophecy. Right? David will come and reign with them. But David had been dead for a long time by the time they got there. So the beloved will reign, and then we start to look at establishing the fallen tent of David. Right? Those things are going to pick up again when we start looking at millennial reign and those sort of overlapping things. Okay. Alright, any other covenants you guys want to mention?
I just want to ask,
Yeah.
Genesis 49 verse 10
Yes.
says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor lawgiver from between his feet. Which is interesting. Well, a lawgiver between his feet, so it's not specifically talking about Judah, but
Remember, there's also a mitzvah for the king. According to Torah, even though he
the
said
right on Torah.
that he would write
Because so that's alluding to that.
it's impossible.
Which is interesting because Levi, was called to teach the law, and it's bringing it in there for science.
Yeah, that is. Okay. So you guys all more or less happy with this?
Is it the Davidic prophecy where it says that his descendants will reign forever?
Do we have to lift it?
Yes, you have to move your.
We have to move this oversized thing in for a moment. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes. I learned live chat as well. Alright. No, it's just carrying on. Okay. So we have all of these.
Thumbs up.
Yes, everybody happy?
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to lead us into, obviously, the topic for today. Okay? I want to get into New Covenant and I want to get into Covenant of Peace. Okay? Now, I'll ask you guys to go and look what the term was, Brit Hadashah. Remember, it's feminine, so we carry there, and to go look at what the paleo sort of breakdown, and also to go look at what Hadash or Hadashah meant in Scripture, throughout Scripture. How do I use it? Where does it kind of overlap? What did you guys find? Yeah?
Yeah. So Brit is covenant.
Right?
Chadash or Chadasha is new or renewed. But when they use it, it's mostly renewed.
Right.
That word mostly means a renewed sense. I've got the paleo here. We'll do that just now.
Okay. So when you look at Chadash, you could say, oh, you have a new car. Yeah? Mechanit Chadash. Is it necessarily a new car? No. Right? So we understand this might be new to you, but this understanding of layer upon layer and promises that layer exactly our covenants will give us a little bit of inkling of how this is used. Now, because of Galatians, we can take a look at it, and like we did last week, the only reason Isaac got the opportunity was because of what he promised Abraham. Right? The only reason Yaakov got the opportunity is because of what happened to Abraham. The only reason we're sitting at the base of Mount Sinai is because he was faithful to what Abraham did. And that whole thing is bringing us back always to that first covenant, because Abraham was found to be righteous because he believed God and he walked with God and he obeyed all the mitzvot that he had, which is another interesting allusion to the fact that the Torah didn't just come down at Mount Sinai. It was there in the time, except that they had no need to write it down. It was probably passed down from mouth to mouth verbally, so they would have understood it. Okay? It says in Scripture that Abraham did all of the mitzvot, he obeyed all the mitzvot that God had, right? And we have this sort of foundation leading up to Sinai. We looked at Genesis 15 when we told them, the covenant that was established. It says, your children are going to be they're going to be locked up in a nation for 400 years. They're going to be slaves. And then I'm going to go judge a nation. And then they're going to leave with great wealth. And all of this stuff is built up to get them to Sinai. When Moses was sent back, who are you? Who do I say that you are? And God starts to give them function. and changing these things to be able to get them formed, to meet them at their need, to be able to give illusions also to what's to come. Right?
I think we need to ask ourselves a question of where do we get this idea of a new covenant overrules an old? Because nowhere do you see that scripturally actually taking place.
Yeah.
We always see God building on. He never says, I will bring a new covenant and it will do away with the rest.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that. And he always uses the old. If we use, say, Sinai, and we use Jeremiah 31, he doesn't say that one pass away. He says, I'll take that and put it in your hearts.
Yeah.
He builds onto it.
Same stipulations, which we're going to get to now. Right. So Sinai is basically the culmination of Abraham's promise to get us to a point. And from Sinai, we're going to build on another layer. Okay, because God's got an agenda. But before we get to that agenda, what did you find with the layer? Twin? Bed?
House,
House? Wash?
head of the man, or first, or
Head.
or beginning.
First? Or the beginning of? Yud?
And on.
Hand? Or something that attaches? No, the nail is above. The nail is above.
Yeah.
The nail is above. So, here's the hand. Okay.
Could be the T is the cross, or
Okay, across the marker.
or a basket, or mud, or clay, or contain, or surround. Which one?
Covenant.
Or covenant.
Or covenant. Missed that one.
Right. Chadash. Okay.
Wall, or outside,
Means
or half.
Outside or fence. Okay, wall slash fence.
Door,
It's a door.
or to hang, or
Away. Chin. To press.
to front teeth.
You will have some teeth.
also separates.
Or separate.
Yeah.
The height.
To reveal. Okay. Or behold. So, tell me a story.
Or can I just add something then quickly?
Yeah.
What's interesting, you look there, so the third, fourth letter, grass, mortar, covenant.
Cross.
Cross.
It's a cross.
Sorry.
So cross, mortar, covenant. Which is interesting because if you look at it from Noah's point, that covering layer,
Yes.
and you look at it from Moses, the mortar, well, they covered.
Well, it's not mortar, it's marker. I'm writing too small for you.
What? Mark?
Marker.
Okay, okay.
So-
What was
Well,
the
some
first
of the
thing
points he was
mortar?
talking about was, like this covering,
Hmm.
which is interesting because it protected them.
Yeah, that's a
The
covenant.
covenant is there to protect.
Yes. That's an solution, except it doesn't have mortar.
Sorry.
Right.
But
So-
it was some of the words that
What's the same? Which one?
Nicholas, that covenant one.
The covenant was across.
The-
Marker, covenant.
So the third,
Yeah.
cross, basket, surround, contain, mud, clay.
Basket.
Basket, kapara.
And we're backing off into again. Surrounded with clay here. Sorry guys.
So it's just interesting.
Right, so the house, although it was the first, or in the beginning, there was a house with a hand that led to a cross or a covenant. There was a fence to the door that separated the reveal. Now, what was revealed at the sign of the breed?
Covenant.
No. What did they cry out to exactly?
God.
Presence.
Well,
Lots
no,
of
they just
God.
cried out.
The scripture says they cried out, they didn't know God. We have this funny illusion, right? I'm just going to throw this in there. But what we need to realize is that these guys in Egypt didn't know who God was anymore. That had been a really long time, we didn't understand him, we don't know who he is, and that's why they went through the plagues that they did. Because he was teaching them, right? I am God, I can distinguish between my people, and I have no equal. Those are the points of the plagues. Right? The wonders, the great manifestations of him. To lead them to a point, so watch the gospel out in play. He came down, he shook heaven and earth, he saved them, he brought them unto himself so he could reveal himself. Right? The saving part was done through Yeshua. To bring you to himself so that you can have a relationship with him. That's the choice. Brings you to the point of covenant, brings you to the point of relationship, and that now falls on you. You've seen what I've done for you. You've seen I've brought you here. Now what's your answer? Are you going to walk with me, yea or nay? And they said,
Yes.
yes, we will do.
Yeah, maybe.
We will do everything you say. Except the whole idolatry thing slipped by the wayside and some things got confused. And we were more Egyptian than we were Hebrew. We've lost the walk of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, that has been 400 years, so we can cut them a little bit of slack. But this word is to reveal him. Now, if we're looking at the first bread, or this covenant that is set up, we're looking at Sinai. He reveals himself. God comes down and he speaks to a people. He doesn't speak to one man. Okay, you've obviously, or you might have come across people that say, well, how can we trust this Moses guy? He went up, he saw God, he came down with some tablets, and now we know his story is accurate. You've negated the rest of the story. God spoke to an entire nation. They got so scared that they told Moses that the next time he talks, he better be in front of them. He doesn't want to have this discussion anymore. You know, it's one of those really interesting verses for me, because when you look at it, and he said, and God thought it was a good idea. And I thought, why would that be? Shouldn't all of us want to hear the voice of God? But he saw it in a different light. If they understand that there's going to be a mediator, a great prophet that will be able to talk to me face to face and will understand your Messiah even better. It wasn't the fact that he was just taking away that intermediary. It was that, okay, I can use this. That's my understanding anyway. So he brings him up to reveal himself. So now we have to ask a question. With all these little pictures, David and the covenant of salt and Aaron and all these things pushing to get God to mold his people to himself. He's going to bring us into this new covenant that everybody gets to talk about, right? And we know our Bibles are separated between Old Covenant and New Covenant. Right? No, literally, it says Old Testament, New Testament. And testament is another word for covenant. So, a man has made a division. The problem with the division is just plain wrong.
Not a very cushion.
Yeah, not a very cushion. Generally not focused on the right thing. So, if we were going to find our new covenant scriptures, where do we go?
Jeremiah 31.
Right, Jeremiah 31. So, your first point of reference is back into the Old Covenant.
Yeah, just got from here.
Yes, it's
Old Covenant is done away with. Go to Jeremiah 31, I'll show you.
You must see people's eyes when you tell them to go look for the new covenant in the Old Testament.
It gets a little confusing. Okay? But we go to Jeremiah 31. Alright? Now let's try and outline this with what we already know about God. And one of the things we know about him is we've got this cycle. He's building up foundation, foundation, foundation. He's taken us from Abraham. If we can understand this little timeline, we've got Noah, and we understand that God's a God of life, and he doesn't want to see our destruction. A little while later, we got good old Ab, and we realize again what he knew with Adam, is that he wants us to walk with him. He doesn't want to walk alone. Wants us to walk. And that gets passed on to Yitzhak, into Yaakov, and then it becomes a nation covenant of Sinai. Okay, and in between the midst of this process, somewhere along the line, we've got another line that's going. They were in bondage, which is Mitzrayim. Okay? Welcome to Egypt. And then he frees them. Freedom. To take them to Sinai. To put them back into bondage. give them Christ. So you can free them. To take them into the millennial reign
Put them back under bondage.
and put them back under bondage. Makes perfect sense, yes?
We've got a comment.
I, God, do not change. So he had to,
Conrad is just reminding you about Galatians 3, verse 17, about no new covenant can replace it.
Thank you, yeah, we spoke about that last week. Right, so we're getting to this is the idea that most people are selling. Obviously it doesn't look right, because how can God come down, shake heaven and earth, free them to only put them into bondage, to send someone to die for the bondage he put them in. So now the Son is working against the Father. And later when the Son comes again, after going to the right hand of the Father and coming down again to establish his kingdom, God's kingdom, he's going to come down again and he's going to put them back into bondage, because Zechariah 14 says that they will come up for the Feast of Tabernacles, and if they don't, they will get no rain.
Isaiah also 66 talks about
Yeah.
moving out from Zion.
There's a few interesting illustrations. So this obviously cannot be correct. So,
There's a battle here between the Father and the Son.
yeah, the Father and the Son are going, and that's why you have old with Willem. Willem likes to always mention a guy by the name of Marcion. Marcion believed that there was a difference between the Old Testament God and the New Testament
He's the one
God.
that coined the term Old Testament, New Testament.
New Testament, Old Testament, and he was of the idea that the Old Testament God was evil and tyrannical and threw his toys whenever he didn't get it right, and the New Testament is all loving and grace. But the problem is Elohim is Echad. He cannot be fighting against himself. A house divided will not stand. We understand that from Yeshua's mouth itself. I am obeying my Father's instructions. So we understand that if we were in bondage and darkness, he gave us our freedom to give us the choice. Same choice. I want to walk with you. I want to do something. I want to show the world and remind them who I am. I want to bring them to me, just as I brought you to me. So yeah, you come slaves to sin in our New Testament understanding. Your freedom, you become a slave to. Scripture says a slave to righteousness. And if Sinai, again, is a ketubah, a wedding contract, this isn't a slave trade, it is a choice. Will you have me, yes or no? Yes, we will. So, we chose to give ourselves completely to God, just as you will again choose to walk with Him as a Talmid, and you're about your Father's righteousness. And that righteousness is going to carry on all the way through until the time gets established. Okay? So, now, but more or less understanding it?
Yes.
Okay, let's go into Jeremiah 31. Here the days are coming, says Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah. Okay, so again, we have to stop and we have to ask ourselves, this is covenant talk. We've got, let's get rid of this, we'll come back to that now. A new covenant. That is deja vu. We did this before. You should be able to immediately know where I'm going.
Yes.
Right? So, who's the covenant with?
Israel.
House
House of Judah, House of Israel.
Israel and Judah. Right? And then again at Sinai, who was it with?
Jacob and Israel.
Jacob
And that was Exodus 19 verse 3 if anyone wants to do that.
and Israel. Okay. So let's draw a little parallel.
And you're going to have to move this thing.
I'm going to have to move. I'm
Just
just
shift
shift
it
that.
that way.
Okay.
Ricky, just take it off.
I needed to be able to read some stuff. Something about reading my Bible and not able to be able to look down. Are you guys okay?
You know those TV ones that like,
Oh, TV1, TV2.
yes. There's like platforms, you need that with the
Alright. So now we're sitting there looking at Yaakov and Israel, and remember as we have spoken, okay, Israel being a picture of the spiritual household, right? We knew there was a mixed multitude with him, we know they went out, and he didn't say for you Gentiles and for you guys, he said there will be one law, one nation, and you all going to do things my way. Okay, we get into the promised land. These are the mitzvot which I'm going to give you.
Just to recap,
Yes.
we see the link between Israel and the spiritual house through when Jacob followed and when he did it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Right. So whenever time he was angry with God, it was more Jacob than Israel. And when he came back into the fullness, found out Joseph was alive, Israel then went out and made an offering. Okay. So we understand that.
Were the northern tribes called Israel? I mean, they were generally not spiritual. They were Western Judah.
Well, that's the problem, is you need to understand the context to which these are written to. Okay? And that's where you need to obviously make these links. Right. So if we look at Jacob and we say that's a physical Jacob, and we look at Israel, we say spiritual Israel. Otherwise it would be a redundant sort of statement. Steve and Steve. I mentioned two parties, but there is only one. But we know there was the mixed multitude, so they were included in something. And now when we get to the renewed covenant, we have our common denominator, Israel. Now this is important because nowhere, as we will read, will you see Gentiles. The only covenant Gentiles have with God is Noah's covenant. Why? Because he made with everything. So then we cannot claim to be new covenant believers because it was never written to us if we don't believe we're part of Israel. And that's why you need to understand Romans and you need to understand why we're grafted in. And when we get it wrong, Paul says things like, you arrogant Gentiles don't think that you support the root of root supports you. You're part of this household.
Right, thank you. Just answered my question.
Okay? And remember, if this branch does not bear fruit, it gets cut off. Right. So, do I get to sow seeds of unrighteousness and I hope the tree lives? Absolutely not. The guy's going to cultivate it, he's going to prune it, and he's going to get it there so we can get the same fruit that we have. We have the benefits of coming back from and have all those blessings from Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sinai. We have Torah because of this, and we can walk into a Messiah that was sent to who?
Jews.
Jews first.
Lost sheep of Israel.
Right? And we then can claim and hold claim on it because of these verses and these things that are going to be established. Right. But here we've got an interesting one, Judah. So now we can take this two ways. One is either talking about the 10 tribes of Israel, which were not really 10, and the southern kingdom of Judah, the north and the south. And he's going to make a covenant with them in its fullness and establish them as one nation. Or, if we understand this, and you'll see it's going to be future established. It started in a point. Which point did this thing start at? Now, you know, I'm jumping ahead of myself, don't worry about that. When it starts, you'll see there has been a long time span between. Okay? And when we get to this place, I find it interesting that people today, Jews today, do not refer to themselves just by the house of Israel, they call themselves Jews. Where do they get that term from?
Judea.
Judea, because they come from the Judean mountains. They acknowledge the fact that they come from a geographical area.
So would some of them actually be directly descendants of Simeon?
Some of them could have been, some of them are Levi, some of them...
Benjamites.
The thing is, the last 10 tribes weren't really lost because we see them in Acts 2.
Yeah.
Jews from all over the nations came up and they went and they had when the Holy Spirit was poured out.
Was that not the Jews that were dispersed?
Well, that's where you get them. The diaspora is where the last 10 tribes went, and we just don't know where they went. Actually, we do. They're all over the place. We've got Jews in Europe, we've got Jews in Africa, we've got Jews everywhere. But now we don't call them the diaspora Jews, we call them what? Ashkenazi or the Sephardic. Ashkenazi, you're European. Sephardic, you're from, yeah. So, you know, you've got these terms that we've now changed to fit our sort of understanding of where we are. Okay?
I was just going to say, how can you look at this as being new when once before God used a man to bring the tribes and everything back together as unity, as one,
Yeah.
for covenant?
Well, that's where the interesting thing about this thing happens. And when we look at the covenant of peace, you'll start to see the image. This nation was split once before, right?
Yes, and then David brought them back.
God brought them back through David.
Yeah.
Right? Judah, he reigned. David, once he was elected king, okay, by Judah alone. And he reigned where?
From Hebron.
Hebron for 7 years.
Mm.
It's not a coincidence, 7 completion, right? It's a perfect number. And then after 7 years,
33 years.
the rest of Israel came down and they asked him, are you not our kinsman? Should you not reign over us also? And he united the tribes that were split because of the factional fighting between David and Saul. And he reigned over them for 33 years. I find that interesting that we think the Lord walked around for 33 years.
And
Okay.
33 plus 7 is 40, which is testing.
Yeah, which is a time for refining, which will get us
No, it's
on the
later
night.
than everything.
Yeah, and then we're back to the Capera.
It sounds like Acts 10.
Yeah, exactly. Which is going to bring us a whole nother circle, which we're not going to go into. Right. So where are we? All right. So he goes, I'm going to make a covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day I took them by the hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt. Because for their part, violated my covenant, even though for my part I was a husband to them. So we get two things about this. He's already talking about the Sinai covenant, not the other ones. He talks about the violation of the covenant, which we know happened in the golden calf. And we know that it was a wedding contract because he is referring to him from that point on as a husband. Okay, so the ketubah, a binding contract. This is not a servitude, one between just a king and nations. He took Israel as his bride. Something that's going to happen later again. And when did the betrothal process start? At Pesach. I will bring you to me. That is the opportunity, that is the choice, and then you can enter into covenant. Gospels play out in the same way.
So do you have a reference of where in Torah does it say that he took them as bride?
Well, the imagery is there. If you look at Exodus 19, he says, I've lifted you
Yeah, I
up
know.
on the wings of eagles.
I know the imagery, I'm just thinking to put a reference here to that.
Well, there's a few places in Scripture where it talks about it. Hosea and Jeremiah and Isaiah and those places.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of it as a direct link back to Exodus 19, somewhere there. But
Yeah.
I know we can see it, it just not please.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And with the Hebraic mindset, there's always pictures, right? So he's going to be focusing on that first. For this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, says Adonai, I will put my Torah within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. Start. So, what was Torah at Mount Sinai?
What was Torah?
Yeah.
It was the marriage covenant, contract.
I thought that was the 10 words, the Decalogue, 10 commandments.
No, I think those were the headings. I mean, what does it mean to covet?
Mhm.
They had no idea, so it had to be explained. This is what coveting is.
So when you went and you two got married, did you sign a 15-page document or a 500-page document, or did you sign a 1-page document?
Suzerainty treaty.
Yeah, well, it should have been a longer document
You signed a 1-page document.
because you can manipulate that and that work means something else.
Even in the Ketubah, you had your highlight girls, which are correct about. These are the headings that need to fall. But Torah was a gift. How then do I interact with you? Now, this is one of the things, it's quite interesting. Manny mentioned it once before. He said, your Bible is a gift. It's an instruction manual on your relationship with God. Now, most men should have one of those when they get married, and then they can learn to say and what not to
Still
say.
waiting for mine.
Still waiting. 7,000 pages and counting. And you go through this process of understanding your spouse, and this is why people struggle the first 7 years, because they start to pick up on, well, they don't pick up fast enough. That gets you into trouble, isn't it? Right? You think you're helping, but you're actually making it worse, because you're only thinking from your perspective. But when you get to know that person really well, you start to think from their perspective. And that's when you really start addressing needs. Now, Abba, in his wisdom, gives us the fullness of this copy, and he says, here, this is my gift to you. This is your inheritance deed. This is your how to understand me manual. This is the fullness of who I am to you and who you are to me. And these are the promises which you hold on to for the fullness and the restoration of all things that will come. And the end is revealed already in the beginning, according to Isaiah, right? So you hold on to that, and you establish this, and you walk into it. One guy said it really nicely. He says, Torah is a gift for redeemed people. It's not a gift for people who are still in servitude to sin. Torah is a gift for a redeemed people. You want to get to know your God? Walk away from that, and then He will give you instruction on how to walk from that point on. It is your gift. It is your birthright. It is your contract to inheritance. It's your ketubah. It's there for you. Right. So that Torah, no longer sitting on an external surface, but now written internally. Something that could not have been done. And remember, who wrote the Ten Commandments? Figure of God, which is a Hebrew idiom for the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. And again, He's going to write, God is going to write it again on their heart. I will put my Torah within them, write it on their hearts, and I will be their God and they will be my people. And like I said to you before, every major covenant will have that as the beeline. I will be their God and they will be my people. Well, yeah, if you understand that right, the commandment about not taking the Lord's name in vain has a very different spin on it. As a bride, you take His surname, everything you do reflects on Him. Don't use it or don't misuse it lightly. Right? Okay. No longer will any of them teach his fellow community member or his brother, know Adonai, for all will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, because I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. No one will need explanation, and no sin will be remembered. Happened? Not in its fullness. Not in its fullness. Okay? So this is still something that is going to be fully put into place. This is what Adonai says. Who gives the sun as light for day, and who has ordained the laws for the moon and the stars, to provide light for the night, who stirs up the sea until its waves roar. Adonai Tsevaot is His name. If these laws leave my presence, says Adonai, then the offspring of Israel will stop being a nation in my presence forever. This is what Adonai says. If the sky above can be measured and the foundations of the earth can be fathomed, then I will reject all the offspring of Israel for all that they have done, says Adonai. So they've clearly done a lot to warrant this, but He says He won't. Right, replacement theology 101. We are the new Israel. The problem with that is, why did He give them back a land then? They were dispersed, they didn't need a land, God was finished with them, it was fine. If that's what Christ came to do, and after they spurned their Messiah, because they said, let our blood be on our heads and our children's, Paul would not have an audience. He says, because if God was finished with me, or finished with the Jews, He'd be finished with me as well. And last time I checked, Shaul got saved. Only long after the death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. Right, so there would be no point.
And there was other, in Acts 1 we see others that were following Torah but hadn't heard the fullness of what Yeshua did and so on, and he tells them that things and they come to that also.
Right, absolutely. Look, the days are coming, says Adonai, when the city will be rebuilt for Adonai from the tower of Hananiah to the quarter gate. The measuring line will be stretched straight at Garav Hill and turned to Goa. The whole valley of the corpse and ashes, including all the fields, as far as the Vadi Kidron, and on to the corner of the horse gate to the east, will be separated out for Adonai. It will never be uprooted or destroyed again. So Jerusalem will be re-established, and it will never again see destruction. Funny that we're seeing some of these sort of signs pop up in our time, where Jerusalem is now becoming much... I say that's a hot topic. And Israel, well, remember that one of the biggest pushes that we see today is that they want Israel divided, Jerusalem divided. Okay? And it's not going to happen. Why? Because it's already promised that these things are never going to be uprooted, these things are going to be put into place, and if we can understand that, then He's going to hold them firm, that He put them in a place already, that these things are going to continue forevermore. Right? Okay.
But Israel, I mean, they won't allow it.
No.
What government at the moment won't allow?
The challenge of Israel is that they will not divide Israel. All the politicians
They're not.
declared that they're not.
That's it. Once it was done, They offered it. They offered once or twice, and then it didn't come, and then they didn't take it back. All right. Next passage of New Covenant, Ezekiel 36. I'm going to read from 22. Ezekiel 36, 22. Therefore tell the house of Israel that Adonai Elohim says this. I'm not going to do this for your sake, house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have been profaning among the nations where you went. So after diaspora. I will set apart my great name to be regarded as holy, since it has been profaned in the nations. You profaned it among them. The nations will know that I am Adonai, says Adonai Elohim. When, before their eyes, I am set apart through you to be regarded as holy. So God's agenda is again His divinity. For I will take you from among the nations, gather you from all your countries, and return you to your own soil. Sound familiar? Is that happening?
But can't people say this was after King Cyrus?
Yeah, but there's a lovely thing, it's cyclical. These things start to happen again, and He's giving you illusion again. So that could be for that time, but also further, right?
But it's more so now than ever before.
It's more than.
Because during that time, a lot of people stayed behind.
Yeah, and listen to the context here. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your uncleanliness and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit inside you, and I will take the stony heart out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit inside you and cause you to live by my laws, respect my rulings, and obey them. Let's stop there. New heart, but you get the ruach as well with this one. So what's the sign of the new covenant?
Spirit.
The Holy Spirit. And how do I know if you have the Holy Spirit or not?
Fruits.
Right. Fruit, and generally what's the first thing that I watch for is change. If you don't see change, there's something not right. Because you were walking in the world, you became born again, that change should have taken place. Right? You didn't want the things of the world anymore. If you're still after the things of the world, we have to ask the question. How deep did this baptism go? Was it just physical, or was there a spiritual connotation to this? There has to be. And that'll give us our second inkling. When you look at the mikvah, that baptism, the idea of that mikvah came from when they were sitting in Sinai and He told them to wash their clothes. Right? Wash, get ready for God will appear. Then all of a sudden, we've got mikvah outside synagogues, we've got mikvah ritual baths on the way to temple, and we're worrying about our outside cleanliness. And when we get into New Testament, we've got this crazy guy living in the wilderness screaming out, repent for the kingdom of God is near. And he's giving a mikvah, but a mikvah of teshuvah, baptism of repentance. What changed? No. You see, John knew that he was preparing the way for this to be fulfilled. The kingdom of God was coming, the Ruach was going to be given in a way that had never been done before. How do I get this going? I will cleanse you from all your uncleanliness. I will sprinkle you clean with water.
That's outside and inside.
Yes, but it's the outside that shows you what's going on the inside. I don't need to give you open heart surgery to circumcise your heart. But you start to see the halakha, and that's what's going to change it, right? So when we get our mikvah, that's a mikvah of teshuvah, coming in and being established with John. Yeshua instructs us again with a different mikvah at the end of the Great Commission. What was his instruction?
Go forth.
Go and make nations in my name.
Yes.
Make disciples.
And teach them to obey everything I've taught you. What did he teach?
Torah.
Torah.
I forget that.
Yeah, that's obedience. It blew my mind. I've like quoted that verse I don't know how many times, and then I read it again, and I'm like, where did that obedience part come in? That obey is a big part, because you cannot be a Talmid unless you walk like a rabbi. It says you need to mimic him, walk like him, act like him. Otherwise you're not a Talmid, you're a disciple. You're not a Talmid, you're a believer. You believe he is the Son of God, or you believe he is the Mashiach, or you believe he's the prophet, but you don't listen to a thing he says. There has to be that change. He told you to go and make disciples. You need to know him intimately. You need to understand him. You need to know his thoughts. You need to know what he taught so that you can then impart that into other people who don't know.
And what happens if they don't want to know?
Discipleship is a choice.
But what about all these evangelists that go out and get people saved, but they're actually not fulfilling what Yeshua actually said?
The thing is that there is a spiritual gift of evangelism. To bring them in, to bring them into the kingdom, to share the good news, and those are good things for them. So they should
That's
bring
not what
them
he's talking
to someone who is able to disciple them. The problem, I think, of the church in its bigness, in the institution that it is, gets a lot of people in the building, but they die there. Because there's no one-on-one interaction. I mean, some of them try their best, they have little fellowships and home cells and those sort of things. But because they've never been discipled in the ways of following after Yeshua, they might have a manual or a handbook or something like that that will help them understand their creed and their church doctrine and all the rest of it. But that's what you're giving them. You're giving them a building, you're giving them an institution, you're not giving them a relationship.
It's almost like they get stuck at Bet Sefer, in a way, and they don't go past to Bet Midrash. They don't actually go into
Explain the difference between
Bet Sefer is just going in, and it's for the young kids learning the Torah, although I'm talking analogies here. Learning the Torah, and then Bet Midrash is if you show an inclination to really understanding the Torah well and growing in the Torah and getting the concepts and the frameworks, and they push you to Bet Midrash, and everyone else goes and becomes fishermen and olive pickers and stuff like that. But the guys with the knowledge go through to Bet Midrash, and then they go and follow a rabbi after that.
And because we've never been taught the cycle of the way disciples were chosen, we never understood the fullness of what discipleship really is. These guys would give up 7 years of their lives to go and walk like this man, to talk like this man, to understand next to this man. Imagine giving up 7 years, leaving your family, leaving your job, and walking with this guy and trying to memorize all of the parables he talks about. Trying to act the way he does. 7 years. What do? People go into a place, they sit in a chair, and they're gone. As long as I'm here, I'm fine. Yeah. They go sit in synagogues, they go sit in churches, and then there's no actual halakha, there's no walk. They go there to make themselves feel good because they're in an institution, and then that's it. Good job, you came here. What did you do? Nothing. You didn't change. You didn't take what you've learned and act it out there. What is it that you came in here for? And after every lesson, there should be one thing that you should be able to go out with and say, "My Messiah lived that out. Now I'm going to put it to my feet." If you don't, you're not walking as a Talmud. You see, we get into this idea that we study so that we can know stuff, so we can seem cleverer than everybody else, because we're the geniuses. The problem is that breeds arrogance. The Jews studied to emulate. I understand it, therefore I can do it. This is a practice thing. We have too much of the Greek mindset in us that if we know about stuff and not put it into practice, then we are therefore intellectual. No, you're failing because you're not doing anything with it. You studied. Let's pick the next thing. You've done all types of programming wherever you are, and you can code whatever you feel like it, but then you become a florist.
Barista.
Yeah, or a barista. Yeah, you got stuck on the coffee. But what we don't understand is that what God is talking about in this Great Commission is discipleship. And He's going to test you on who you disciple and who you brought up. It is the Great Commission, and we don't talk about it because we don't understand it. It is your job to raise up people. And guys, if you get one, just one, your job's done. If you can just train up one person and establish them in Torah so that they understand that they need a personal relationship with Christ, that they taught, that He spoke Torah, they walked Torah, and they acted out, your job is done. Where's your heart at? we need to understand that that mikvah that came into it is not just coming into Teshuvah. Teshuvah leads you to Christ because I need to get away from the world, but also at the same time in this mikvah I acknowledge who He is and I acknowledge who I am and where I should be or where I want to be. If you have that sort of intimate relationship with God, that's how you work with Him. That's what you need to learn. You need to learn righteousness. You need to study righteousness. You need to learn how to act and sound like Him, even if it's just for a second, so that you can move forward. Everything else, you fall short. So, I will cause you to live by my laws. Respect my rulings and obey them. New covenant believers teach you the opposite. You can forget about His laws and you don't have to worry about respecting and obeying anything. Why? Because I don't want to. Problem. Heart condition hasn't changed. Your heart hasn't been renewed. You will live in the land I gave to your ancestors. You will be my people and I will be your God. Same phrase. I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will summon the grain and increase it. You will and not send famine against you. I will multiply the yield of your fruit and the trees and increase production in your fields so that you never again suffer from reproach or suffer the reproach of famine among the nations. Then you will remember your evil ways and your actions that were not good. As you look at yourselves, you will loathe yourselves from your guilty and disgusting practices.
That's what Singapore. If that's
God saved you. You did nothing to earn it. He gives you this grace. He pulls you out from yourself. He sprinkles you up, makes you all pretty, feeds you and all the rest of it, and then He looks at you and He goes, how about it? And 5 minutes ago, let's use the parable of the prodigal son. You were feeding pigs. You were running for your life. You were starving. You were out there. You were bowing down to idols. This is where you were.
Quite interesting that.
It is.
The only place you'd be feeding pigs was on the real agriculture side.
Yeah, he went dark. He went dark quickly. Somewhere there was a choice for the tzitzit to come off. You know, that's funny. When people leave this work or this walk, this is one of the first things they drop. I disagree with that fellowship, so therefore I take off tzitzit. You can no longer be externally identified as one of them. What saddens me is it's not one of them, but one of God's. Right? Okay. Understand, says Adonai Elohim, that I am not doing this for your sake. Instead, be ashamed and dismayed for your ways, house of Israel. Adonai Elohim says this, when that day comes for me to cleanse you from all your guilt, I will cause the cities of the to be inhabited and the ruins to be rebuilt. That was desolate will be tilled, whereas formerly lay desolate for all passing by to see. Then they will say, the land that used to be desolate has become like Gan Eden, and the cities formerly ruined, abandoned and wasted have now been fortified and inhabited.
Similar Israel today.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It was it Mark Twain? I went to Israel, and he went over there just before when it was still called Palestine. And he was sitting there, it was under Arab control, and he said, why would anybody want to go there? It is a God-forsaken wasteland. It is desolate. It's a dust bowl. When it was arid, and when there were swamps, it was mosquito infested. Tel Aviv was a swamp, the Hula Valley was swamps, and now the Hula Valley is a nature reserve that you drive through. They actually started planting trees to drain the water. It is one of the only countries in the world that have net gain of trees. Forestation instead of deforestation. There's growth there. They're farming in the wilderness. Cities are being built up. Jerusalem has never been bigger in any of its time in history than it is today. Think about that for a second. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask something?
Sure.
Ezekiel 36 is obviously speaking of the new covenant, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then in speaking of the new covenant, it says that you should do the laws, the right rulings, you should actually obey them. And it's speaking of the new covenant. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding that because, I mean, most mainstream churches obviously believe that a large part of the laws are completely done away with, and to the point that they don't even believe that you're supposed to keep all the 10 Commandments, for instance. But then even amongst Messianic believers, there's a lot of controversy as to which laws you should and shouldn't keep.
Right.
To the point that, how do you explain to people what criteria to use as in which laws have then been, I don't want to use the word fulfilled because we know what the word fulfilled means, but which laws would be inappropriate for us to continue with and which laws we should actually be keeping? What criteria do you use to explain that to people? Because there's such a lot of controversy as to where to draw the line.
I think context is the biggest thing for us, right? So if you look at it, what they do is we've lumped it, okay?
Good question.
We've lumped it and we've gone, okay, you've got 613 mitzvot that you have to worry about. In reality, you can't do 613 mitzvot because some of them are for women, some of them are for men. Right? Some are for kings, some are for Levites, some are for people with Zaharat. Hopefully none of us here have that, right? And you can't go according to that thing. We obviously, when we go into the sacrificial system and we look at what Messiah came and did, in many cases, purification offering, sin offering, guilt of trespass offering, we can see him through that. So those ones are the obvious ones. What people fail to see is that they try to lump it together. But you literally got to take context in each and every single one. So that's, one of the more common statements that people have. Oh, so now we're under the law again, do we now stone our children?
Yeah.
And I smile and I go, well, tell me what the mitzvah is for stoning someone. And they don't know. So I'm like, do I just stone someone because I feel like it? What do I do? No, we actually have to have a Sanhedrin, right? And we have to go take the debacle, whatever it was, to them, and that has to be very serious if you're talking about stoning. So what constitutes a stoning? Have they broken Shabbat? Oh, no, we don't like to talk about that mitzvah. Oh, okay, we're just checking. You know? What did they kidnap somebody? Murder? You know, many places around the world, we've got no problem instituting the death penalty. But talk about stoning someone. Oh, no, you're definitely under bondage. Like, what's the difference between that and lethal injection? Yeah, the nice thing about those things is you don't even have to be in the room. You get someone else to do it.
Or abortion.
Or abortion, or those sort of scenarios. But anyway, they have to be investigated. So we have to go to a Sanhedrin. Now our Sanhedrin will rule, and our Sanhedrin, as we know throughout time, will always err for life, because God is a God of life. Even if I find one family, just one family, then it'll all be okay. He tried to save as many as he could. Every time, it's always about saving. Even with Yeshua rebuking him, it's an open invitation. I've caught you right now. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to make teshuvah, or are you going to carry on with your story? So when you look at those sort of things, what I do is I normally just try and open up the scriptures for them and say, look, this thing wasn't handled. I mean, what was it? I think a Sanhedrin, in the Mishnah, it talks about if a Sanhedrin stoned someone in 20 years, they were considered a bloody Sanhedrin. That's how they went, and they looked at everything. You need 2 or 3 witnesses to be able to identify this is what's going on, and we don't talk about those things.
That was part of the judicial law, and we, as our country today, have a judicial law that we have to abide by. So I don't think people have a problem with the judicial law. I think the problem is where people lump everything under ceremonial law, and then they come and they say, but you don't have to have a mezuzah, you don't have to wear,
Yes.
you don't have to keep a fish, you don't have to have tzitzit, you don't have to do anything because it's all ceremonial and it's all done away with. You know, that's the kind of debate I've been having with somebody.
Let me attack that for what that is, right? First of all, you're not going to see any of those breakups in Scripture. You're not going to see ceremonial law or holiness code, judicial code, civil code. You don't see that because Deuteronomy 1 second is talking about wanting a kid in his mother's milk, and the next second he's talking about kidnapping, and yet it's right next to each other. You're like, okay, how did we go from left over there to here? The rabbis teach, and it's funny enough that even the rabbis do this, they even try to break it up into little subgroups. The rabbis teach that if you pull one mitzvah out, the whole pearl necklace falls together. There's one solid link. You cannot pull one pearl out of a pearl necklace and expect it all to stay together. But what our biggest problem is what they call holiness code. Okay? Now, holiness code comes to this point of what identifies me or sets me apart. And I find that it's just a commonality with a lot of people. We won't fight you about death penalty. We won't fight you about kidnapping wrong. We won't fight you about lying, stealing, adultery. Those are all bad things. Tzitzit, mezuzot, eating
Or
kosher.
even fourth commandment.
Yeah, Shabbat, all of those things set you apart as someone that belongs to God. It is a sanctification mitzvah. If you understand what a tzitzit represents, I don't need to tell you which God I serve and how I walk it out. You know tzitzit and you know my stand. Who do you serve? It's obvious. Right? But this is something that sets me apart. Eating kosher. Even though it's in the section of eating clean and unclean, I need to understand the difference between eating clean. What's the difference between unclean, clean, and holy? And I will not defile myself with the unclean because I'm a nation that's set apart. Shabbat, there will be a sign between you and me. Feasts and festivals, hot topic. There will be a sign between you and me. Those are the ones we want to pull away from because I didn't be trying to pull away from the sanctification process.
Can I just share one more thing quickly? I had an argument with somebody the other day about somebody that said to me, you actually don't have to keep the feasts because it's impossible to keep the feasts because 3 of the feasts are pilgrimage feasts and it's impossible for us to all pickle off to Israel for the pilgrimage feast and therefore it's silly to even try and keep the feast, so we don't have to keep the feast. So, you know, it's almost as though they're looking for excuses not to do what you're supposed to do instead of looking for excuses to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it comes down to that whole thing. If I can justify why it doesn't have to cost me anything. That's the thing. Ultimately, you have to give up something to be sanctified in that place, right? And you have to take that stand and you're going to have to say, I'm going to do this at any cost. Yes, we came into this knowledge, we stay far away from everything, it's difficult, and it costs a lot of money to get up to Israel. Right? But at the same time, those pilgrimage feasts were instituted for people that were living in the land with agricultural feasts and they were supposed to take up their first fruits. So why are you going? Now, I'm not trying to debunk it. I'm trying to ask them the question so they get to think there's more about this than what they thought about. Because someone said it's impossible to do, so therefore we can't do it. Right? It doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to go up and serve His feet. And the whole point of it is, and again, those things are for the men to go up. Right? So the men can go up. Instead of asking why not, why don't we say, why does God want the men to go up? Who's running their houses?
Me.
How far can you fall if you're at His feet 3 times a year? Like, I get supercharged, I go once a year. By the end of the year, I need to go. I really feel like I could go again. If I went 3 times a year, I would be happy and bouncing all the time and we could just take on the world, man. You know? But that's the thing. We miss the blessing in what we're supposed to do because we justify why we shouldn't. And now, if you're going to start nitpicking those sort of things, you're actually giving issues. Why do I have to sit with my father on his birthday? That's just wrong. We can't really celebrate his birthday because he was born how many years ago? He's old now, he doesn't remember it, so therefore we can forget it too. And you get into justification mode. But ultimately, those are the things that set you apart. Look at what Hasatan is doing. He's pulling away the sanctity. Right? And if we let him do that, then we have to nullify mitzvot that comes straight out of Leviticus that says, be holy for I am holy. That's an instruction. That means it's an action, I actually have to do it. So how then can I not? I have to fulfill the mitzvah. How am I to be holy? Follow the things that He set out.
The other lie that's really being told a lot to people is that it's too difficult to keep the feast. It's too involved, it's too hard, it's too complicated, and it's too difficult. And my first reaction is, I did a lot more trouble for Christmas when I used to celebrate Christmas. I spent a lot more money and I did a lot more effort. This is actually a breeze.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
So it's actually not that hard.
Yeah. No, that's the thing, they justify why they should
It
want
can
to.
be done, it's not that hard.
And again, it takes them down to that parable where, Yeshua said, well, come and sit at my table. And there's a wedding. Come and eat my food. Come and sit there. And all the rest of them, they go, nah, I'm going to go look at my field. I'm going to go wash my hair. I'm going to do whatever excuse you want to. And that's where their heart's at. That's ultimately the problem. We're sitting and looking at it from a choice of we get the time to celebrate because we get to remember. And we look forward to the time. How many times did we hear, just in these 2 passages, that He said, I'm going to gather you to. Yeah?
Scripture for that.
Thank you.
1 John 5 says, by loving God and carrying out His commandments, in fact, This is love for God, to keep His commands, and His commands are not burdensome.
And
For everyone born to God overcomes the world.
Yeah.
commands are not burdensome.
And again, your Psalm 119 will reaffirm those as well. You want to add something?
Yeah, I've got a few things. Firstly, with that whole thing about we can't go to Israel, the first Passover took place in Egypt, and they kept it. Also, we see Paul in Acts saying, you know, I must make it to Jerusalem, he wants to keep it there. But because he could go, doesn't mean everyone that they were still keeping the feast with that word, Galatia and whatever else. And then coming back to what laws do we have to do and so on, I think there's a lot of them that we can see we can't do. Kings, women, I'm not a woman, so I can't do those and what so on. But also, what I think people don't understand what Yeshua came for. We look at Abraham and Isaac. From there, it already tells us there was a sacrifice to take the place. Also, John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God who comes to take away the sin of the world." You see, they confuse the law and sin. He never came to take away the law; he came to take away sin,
That's
or
right,
came to
that's
cover
right.
for sin.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He didn't come to go, okay, I'm coming to take away sin, the law, so that you won't have a consequence. He came to take away the consequence
Yes.
and give us life and show us how to follow.
That's exactly it.
But people confuse that. They don't understand.
Yeah.
What did he come for? He came to be the sacrifice.
That's a nice justification, eh?
Yeah.
All right. We're guys more or less happy with the framework of what we're talking about, Jonathan. Okay, you should be second teaching round, right? Okay. Very quickly. I want us to go to Isaiah 54. Let's talk about this covenant of peace. Okay, and as we mentioned previously, this is now already given us the story of Pinchas. In Numbers 25, he starts talking about Pinchas, and he had to spear people because he was zealous for God's story. That was a good thing. He receives the covenant, and that's the first mention of covenant of peace. Right? We're going to go into the next one. Sing, barren woman who has never had a child, burst into song, shout for joy. You have never been in labor, for the deserted wife will have more children than the woman who is living with her husband, says Adonai. Enlarge the space of your tent, extend the curtains of your dwelling. Do not hold back, lengthen your cords, make your tent pegs firm. For you will spread out to the right and to the left. Your descendants will possess the nations and inhabit the desolate cities. Don't be afraid, for you won't be ashamed. Don't be discouraged, for you won't be disgraced. You will forget the shame of your youth, no longer remember the dishonor of being widowed, for your husband is your maker, Adonai Tzebaot is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He will be called the God of all the earth, for Adonai has called back like a wife abandoned and grief-stricken. A wife married in her youth cannot be rejected, says God. Briefly I abandoned you, but with a great compassion I'm taking you back. I was angry for a moment and I hid my face from you. But with everlasting grace I will have compassion on you, says Adonai, your Redeemer. Okay? You're getting a theme here. Okay? Redemption. You were shamed before, you made the wrong choice, and now I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to put you back in your place. For me, this was like Noah's flood. Just as I saw that no flood like Noah's would ever again cover the earth, so now I swear that never again I will be angry with you or rebuke you. Right? Has that happened yet? Right? If you guys made God angry at one time already this week, hopefully not. But if we go back maybe 2 or 3 weeks, probably could find one thing. For the mountains may leave and the hills be removed, but my grace will never leave you, and my covenant of peace will not be removed, says Adonai, who has compassion on you. Okay. Storm-ravaged city, uncle of Sold, I will set your stones in the finest way, lay your foundations with sapphires, make your windows shine like rubies, your gates with garnet, your windows with gemstones. All your children will be taught by Adonai. Your children will have great peace. In righteousness you will be established, far from oppression, with nothing to fear. Far from ruin, for it will not come near you. Any alliance that forms against you will not be my doing. Whoever tries to form such an alliance will fall because of you. Alright, let's just stop there. It talks about the foundations being learned with finest stones. Where do we see that in Scripture?
Revelations 21.
Yeah, New Jerusalem, right? Coming down. We see those foundations being established. Right? Alliances still come against them. Revelations again. The nations will come up and they will try and overthrow God, right? It is I who created the craftsman who blows on the coals and forges weapons, suited for their purpose. I also created the destroyer to work havoc. No weapon made will prevail against you. In court you will refute every accusation. The servants of Adonai inherit all of this. The reward for their righteousness is from me. Okay.
But when the nations attacked Israel, I think it was 3 times they got together and tried to wipe them out.
Yeah, two or three times.
So that's not the fulfillment of this, that's just an example of this.
I think it's possible. Right, with this covenant of peace, it's kind of, it alludes to a time that we don't really understand and we don't see. It gives hints to me about millennial reign. If we look at this new covenant sort of idea, the renewed covenant started out when? I will remember your sins no more, I'll put my spirit within you.
Well, Acts 2.
So we started, well, first with the crucifixion. Okay, and then we go into Acts 2 with the pouring out of the Holy Spirit. Okay, and then we've got this time when He will remember your sins no more, and everything will be hunky-dory and all the rest of it. I'm going to put my Torah inside of you. You don't have to teach anybody or anything. So we go on and on and on. Okay, that points to a time that hasn't happened yet, but the start of it has. Okay, it's a similar illustration to when we start talking about the kingdom of heaven. Okay? When you look at the kingdom of heaven, He says, indeed, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's coming. It's here. And then at other times He's standing there and He says, indeed, the kingdom is here.
Yeah, the kingdom of heaven is amongst you.
Right, because He's there. And He's establishing His kingdom. God's kingdom, redeeming people, bringing them back into His kingdom, spiritually first and then physically later. Right? And that's again going to be pushing again towards millennial and then the fullness of the establishment at the end of the final Sukkot, after the judgment has taken place, the white throne judgment. Yes? Okay, more or less with me. Okay? So this covenant of peace seems to make similar illustrations. Okay? We're going to look at another one. Go back to Ezekiel 34. There's one I found today actually.
It's just before there,
Yeah.
the end of 54 in Isaiah, it says, the reward for their righteousness is from me.
Yeah.
And righteousness, again, takes you back to Torah.
Yes. That needs to be a tzaddik. Right. So, go to Ezekiel 34. Okay. The word of Adonai came to me, human being, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy. Tell them the shepherds that Adonai says this. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who feed themselves. Shouldn't the shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the choice meat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, and you slaughter the best of the herd, but you don't feed the sheep. You don't strengthen the weak, heal the sick, bandage the broken, bring back the outcasts, or seek the lost. On the contrary, you tyrannize them with crushing force. So they were scattered without a shepherd and became food for every wild animal. They were scattered. My sheep wandered around aimlessly on every mountain and hills. Yes, my sheep were scattered all over the land, with no one to search for them and to look after them. Now let me just pause here and take you back to the Gospels a little bit. Remember, Yeshua sent His disciples out and they were rowing and rowing and rowing out the night. He said, don't worry, I'll meet you there. And He sat there on the mountain and He was watching them. It says, it came to about the 3rd watch. So we're talking about 3 o'clock in the morning, somewhere there. Alright? And they're rowing and they're rowing and rowing and they're not getting anywhere. Right? He gets in and he starts to walk, and if you start looking at the fullness of the Gospel split, it says He was about to walk on by, and then they thought, a ghost, and they freaked out, and then they said, no, hang on a second, it's Rabbi. Why would He allow them to go through all of that? Just sitting there watching Him, having a wonderful time rowing and 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 rowing. And by the way, you're rowing on chaos and your rabbi's not around. Why would He send them out into chaos to watch them?
See what they would do.
Ooh. Just before that, they were chasing the people away from Him. Leave Him alone. Go that side. Go and do this. All of these things. Because we need time with our rabbi. Right?
Shannon.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
He sends them away. They want to send them away. And he says, he looked at them and he had compassion on them like sheep from a shepherd looking at the sheep. Right? Paraphrasing. Okay? He understood that they needed him and they needed guidance and they needed food. And he saw how helpless they were and he wanted his disciples to feel that. You go walk around out there in chaos. You go and struggle through life with no one giving you hope and no one giving you food. And then, when you see me, what are you going to do? They cried out. What did the sheep do on the other side? When they saw Yeshua performing miracles, they cried out. He wanted them to feel that. There are times and there are moments in your walk where you will look at someone and you will break and you don't know why. You'll feel the Father's heart. You need to understand what it was like again. Sometimes we forget you've been doing this for so long, or you're sitting on the other side and you just don't know what other people are going through. And then he might remind you where he pulled you out from. Okay? Therefore, shepherds, hear my words. As I live, Adonai Elohim swears, because my sheep have become prey, my sheep have become food for every wild animal. Since there was no shepherd, since my shepherds didn't look after my sheep, and instead my shepherds fed themselves, but not my sheep. Therefore, shepherds, hear the word of Adonai. Adonai Elohim says, I am against the shepherds. I demand that they hand my sheep back to me. I will not allow them to feed the sheep. They will not feed themselves either. I will rescue my sheep from their mouths. There will be food for them no longer. That's interesting with the commission of Peter again, right? For here is what Adonai Elohim says, I am taking over. I will search for my sheep and look after them myself. Gospels. Just as a shepherd looks after his flock when he finds them among his scattered sheep, so I will look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered. When it was cloudy and dark, I will bring them back from those people, gather them from those countries, and return them to their own land. Think of Paul. When I will let them feed on the mountains of Israel by the streams and in all the livable places of the land, I will have fed them in good pastures. Their grazing ground will be on the high mountains of Israel. They will rest in good grazing grounds and feed in rich pastures on Israel's mountains. Yes, I will pasture my flock, and I will let them rest, says Adonai Elohim. I will seek the lost, bring back the outcast, bandage the broken, strengthen the sick, but the fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them with judgment. As for your flock, Adonai Elohim says this, I will judge between the sheep and other sheep, between rams and billy goats. Wasn't it enough for you to feed on the best pasture and drink from the clearest water? Did you have to trample the rest of the pasture and foul the remaining water with your feet? So now, my sheep, eat what you have trampled with your feet, and drink whatever fouled by your feet. Therefore, here is what Adonai Elohim says to them. I will judge between the fat sheep and the thin sheep, because you push them with the flanks and the shoulders and butt all the weak ones away with horns till you scatter them in every direction. Therefore, I will save my flock, and they will no longer be prey, and I will judge between sheep and other sheep. I will raise up one shepherd to be in charge of them, and he will let them feed my servant David. Again, David's not alive anywhere near this time. He will pasture them and be their shepherd. I, Adonai, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, Adonai, have spoken. I will make a covenant of peace with them. I will rid the land of wild animals, and they will live securely in the desert and sleep in the forests. I will make them and the places around my hill a blessing, and I will cause the rain to fall when it should. There will be showers of blessing. The trees in the field will bear the fruit, and the soil its produce, and they will be secure in the land. Then they will know that I am Adonai. When I break the bars of the yoke on their yoke and rescue them from the power of those who turned them into slaves. No longer will they be prey for the goyim, for the nations, nor will the wild animals devour them, but they will live securely with no one to make them afraid. I will make the productivity of their crops famous, and they will no longer be consumed by hunger in the land or bear the shame of the nations anymore. They will know that I, Adonai, their God, am with them, and that they, the house of Israel, are my people, says Adonai Elohim. You, my sheep, the sheep in my pasture, are human beings, and I am your God, says Adonai Elohim. So again, a time of walking, if we look at this covenant of peace again, of being gathered, of walking with Messiah, with David, and that was started because of his zeal. And then we've got Isaiah 54, where you talk about extending the tents, the tent pegs, because of the gathering, and remembering the shame no more. No shame. God will be with them. Okay? So, New Covenant seems to talk about the Ruach and sprinkling and cleaning and also gathering. The Covenant of Peace so far, those who are zealous for my word, those who are zealous for his house. Remember, the whole point of the zealousness was because of what? What did Pinchas
the Moabite ladies came into the camp because of the whole Bilam and Balak thing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And Pinchas got upset.
Worshipping where?
In the temple, in a funny way.
They went to the Mishkan and they were going to defile it, right? So he was zealous not only for God but also for his Mishkan, his sanctuary. Where is this Mishkan, where is this Mishkan going to be? Millennial reign. In Jerusalem, right? The New Jerusalem is going to come, he's going to dwell there with them, right? Yes, no, maybe? I just expecting your songs. Right, jolly good. Last scripture. Go to Ezekiel 37.
Sorry, so can I add something that I noticed in the Covenant of Peace in Numbers 25?
Sure.
In Numbers 25 verse 12, it speaks of my covenant of peace. But then when you go on to verse 13, it says it's a covenant of the everlasting priesthood. So if the covenant of peace is the covenant of the everlasting priesthood, does that make it the covenant of the order of Melchizedek? Because that is the everlasting priestly order?
This is going to take us down a rabbit hole. You've got two ways of looking at it, right? An everlasting priesthood, right, is either going to take you down through the lineage of Pinchas himself, okay, which is going to take you down to Mashiach through the sons of Sadok. That's a whole other rabbit trail that we can get into sometime.
Okay, but the whole thing that I'm alluding to is he's already a Levite, and there was already a covenant of salt made with the Levitical priesthood.
Right.
It seems to me as though he's made some transition from a salt covenant to this covenant of the everlasting priesthood that speaks of the order of Melchizedek, which is the eternal covenant.
That's a possibility, right?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, now look, it is a possibility
maybe see that there.
because something that is eternal, right? And you can obviously go to the order of Melchizedek and you can see that he had no beginning and no end, and that was a priesthood that was ordained by God. But again, who was Pinchas while we there?
He was a priest.
Yes, son of Eliezer.
Son of Eliezer.
High priest.
Okay, so he was already a son, he already had Aaronic
He's already a
covenant.
Levite.
He already had a Levite, he was Kohen, right? He was next in line to be Kohen HaGadol, and that sort of filters through. We can actually trace this lineage all the way through to Sadok and Sadok down. But what's difficult about tracing the lineage is that when one priest is bad, like Eli and his sons, they get wiped out and it moves from one brother to the next brother, and then it'll come back later. Okay? Sort of establishing the same thing. So you would have to try and identify the sign of what is going on here. Let's look at the next passage and then we can have a look at it. Right. Okay, 37. With the hand of Adonai upon me, Adonai carried me out by his spirit and set me down in the middle of the valley, and it was full of bones. He had me pass by around him, and there were so many bones lying in the valley and they were so dry. He asked me, human being, can his bones live? I answered, Adonai Elohim, only you know that. When he said to me, prophesy with his bones, say to them, dry bones, hear what Adonai has to say. To these bones, Adonai Elohim says, I will make breath enter you and you will live. Word for breath? Generally leading into ruach, right? I will attach ligaments with you and your flesh will grow over you with skin and put breath in you and you will live and you will know that I am Adonai. So I prophesied as ordered, and while I was prophesying there was a noise, a rattling sound. It was the bones coming together, each bone in its proper place, and I watched ligaments grew on them, flesh appeared and skin covered them, but they had no breath in them. Next he said to me, prophesy to the breath, prophesy human being. Say to the breath that Adonai Elohim says, come from the four winds, breathe, and breathe on these slain, so that they may live. So I prophesied and ordered, and the breath came into them, and they were alive. They stood up on their feet, a huge army. Then he said to me, human being, these bones are the whole house of Israel. And they were saying, our bones have been dried up, and our hope is gone, and we're completely cut off. Okay. So something that seems to be dead, okay, is now being reborn through the power of the Ruach, and with it their hope. And is one sort of understanding of this is when the nation of Israel was completely dispersed, they had no homeland, and when they're coming back, this hope is starting to return. The nation can revive itself. And it's quite interesting that Hebrew is one of the only ancient languages that have been revived. Okay, so it could be an illusion to that. Therefore, prophesy, say to that Adonai Elohim says, my people, I will open your graves and make you get up out of your graves, and I will bring you into the land of Israel. When is that going to happen?
What's happening?
Well, dead people coming out of their graves going up to Israel.
Well, when Yeshua rose, dead people rose.
Right, we saw that small illustration of that with crucifixion, and when he rose, then there were other people popping up. Okay, but we also see this at the white throne judgment, right? Those for the book of life and those who are not. Right. Then you will know that I am Adonai, when I have opened your graves and made you get up and out of your graves, my people. I will put my spirit in you, and you will be alive. Then I will place you in your own land, and you will know that I, Adonai, have spoken, and that I have done it, says Adonai. So again, the regathering. The word of Adonai came to me, you human being, take one stick and write on it for you, Judah, and who joined with him, and the people of Israel. Next, take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who were joined with him. Finally, bring them together into a single stick, so that they may become one in your hand. So what do you see there?
This is
Two sticks.
The northern and the southern coming together again.
Northern and southern coming together again. So this kind of gives this illustration, except you can call them two names. So some people will look at the covenant of peace and saying it's a renewed covenant, it's the same thing. But he talks about it differently. So here we have what tribes? We've got Judah.
Simeon.
Who makes the sticks? Who makes the sticks? Judah
and Ephraim.
And Ephraim.
Because Ephraim they use for...
Ephraim is the northern tribes. That's where they set up the capital. It says Judah with Israel.
Judah and those are joined with
that's
them
two
among the
gods.
people of Israel.
Now you start to see. And Ephraim was representing the stick of Joseph, and all who, again, have aligned themselves, who are companions too, on both sides. So we have the actual tribes, and then we have those who have aligned themselves with them. Ephraim, and again we'll look at the blessings, and we'll say we'll become the fullness of the nations. Jews of the diaspora have brought their Torah, have brought religion, have brought their stuff, and without in all the nations, it was all of a sudden, God in His wisdom, has sprinkled salt throughout the whole earth to get them to start to understand who He is. The reason you're sitting here is because someone taught something about Torah and Messiah, and then you have a Bible. It's amazing that. Where did that come from? So anybody who aligned themselves, and I want you to think of this alignment, we're going to go back to Ruth. Your God will be your God, my God will be a different. Yes, different part of the time. And that whole point of that thing is again talking about a redeemed people into a piece of land. They went back into the land. They gleaned from the land. They were established in the house of Boaz, in his strength. That's what it means. Okay? And we will notice that again, they're zealous for that. They will walking with Mashiach, or they will be shepherd, they will be gathered, and again, there will be a large number of people so that we can extend the tents. Okay? Where am I? No.
Ezekiel.
Yes, back in his old.
I think 17, 18.
Yeah, okay, join with him. Yeah. I think, tell the people, otherwise I will take the stick Yosef, which is in the hand of Ephraim, together with the tribes of Israel who are joined, and I will put with him, and put them together to one stick of Judah, and make them a single stick, so that they will become one in my hand. Now again, I'm going to take you back.
Regathering.
Not just regathered. One nation started from one land. All the way up here until this nation became many, and then after Sinai they became one. And if we look at the new covenant again, now it's not only one physically as a nation, but also one in spirit. Are we starting to see what Abba's doing? And where are you all going to be gathered to? One territory. At least they had to walk with him for a time. Okay. The sticks on which you write are to be in your hand as they watch. Then say to them that Adonai says, I will take the people of Israel from among the nations, where they have gone, and gather them from every side, bring them back into their own land. I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all of them. There will no longer be two nations. They will never again be divided into two kingdoms. One law, one heartbeat, one king. This is again that picture of what David did. And David is again mentioned in this covenant, right? They will never again defile themselves with their idols, their detestable things, or any of their transgressions, but I will save them from all the places where they have been living and sinning. That's a nice one. And I will cleanse them so that they will be my people and I will be their God. Just pause it. The assimilation of the people in places. You have met Jews before, and you've met ones that call themselves bad Jews. Why? Because they eat more bacon than you used to. Right? And at the same time, you will see Christians today that will be once a week Christians. Right? You need to understand this is the fullness of something here. But he's going to change them and cleanse them from wherever they are. My servant David will be king over them, again David, and all of them will have one shepherd. Ezekiel 34. They will live by my rulings and keep and observe my regulations. New covenant, new heart. They will live in the land I gave to Yaakov my servant, the physical seed, Yaakov. So we're going back to Sinai mentioned. Where your ancestors lived, they will live there. They, their children, and their grandchildren forever. And David, my servant, will be their leader forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant. I will give to them, increase their numbers, and set my sanctuary among them forever. My home will be with them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. The nations will know that I am Adonai, who sets Israel apart as holy, when my sanctuary is with them forever. He is still teaching nations. They will know. What does that sound like to you? Leading us again into millennial reign. It starts at a point, and it gives us indication of the fullness of what he's trying to do, and he's going to take us all the way back, redeemed, establishing a land, and what starts in millennial reign will be coming to its fullness after judgment, and when he again tabernacles forever. New Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth, new you. Your body will no longer have these issues that they have now. Okay? Are we more or less happy? Starting to see that happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So, why don't we... Yeah, run a little bit over time. What sort of sign do you think that this sort of attack on? And now, I don't have an answer for this, so I'm just free thinking for a minute.
I want the peace,
It will be peace.
It's very good. There'll be peace, and you'll be in the land.
I think unity, there will be no division between, no matter whether you're Jew or Gentile or whatever. I think there will be unity.
There'll be unity.
Yeshua will be reigning in Jerusalem. Big
His
sign.
house.
We could use the spear of Pinchas as the sign.
That's the sign. What I'm seeing, just hear me out. You're seeing all of these covenants sort of play out, one layer upon the layer here. Okay? Now this isn't a timeline lapse when it comes to New Covenant and peace, because all of these things are overlapping, so they effect, right? You're looking at one nation that came from one man to get us into this one nation that's coming in here, and you have the sign of Shabbat, which you're going to be doing. Circumcision of the heart or circumcision of the thing. You will have your spirit, which is going to enable you to give you a new heart that's going to go into it. When you start looking at the Davidic household in this place of peace, you have the shepherd that will live with them. Which is again leading to a promise here where David, all the blessings of Genesis 49, the scepter will never pass. Now there's also another promise when it comes to that, is that there will not be someone from the son of Judah, and also a Levite who sits before the throne. I think it's 2 Samuel. Okay? So again, we're starting to look at linking this blessing into covenant of salt, which is going to lead us to the Aaronic sort of idea of the high priest being Yeshua again. Sitting in this space will bring us back to this covenant through Pinchas, through a physical lineage that will tie in here, and that will be part of the Son, because part of this Mishkan, the sanctuary being established, is going to, through Sukkot, at the end of everything, will lead us to his sanctuary staying there, with him staying there, and with him acting as priest and king. Kingship. Pointing at it.
We could also throw the new city there as the sign.
Well,
New Jerusalem.
that's the part of the son of the David covenant. His house would be a woman.
Yeah.
And his son, someone from the tribe of Judah, would be there too. So those signs seem to, I don't know, just in my mind,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Do you think righteousness can be a sign? Because in Isaiah 54, where it speaks of the covenant of peace, it speaks of in righteousness you shall be established.
Righteousness is about your halakha, and your righteousness is faith, and that will lead you to obedience. So again, it's that spirit that's going to give you that, but that's
The
your faith
walking
and
out
culture,
of the righteousness could be a sign.
which is walking Torah. But your faith in God that led you down that path is what also gets you there, because through his faith
But I
in
don't mean the
righteousness.
imputed righteousness from your salvation, I mean the actual practicing of righteousness.
Which is walking in Torah,
Yes.
which is established again from New Covenant going
Yes.
into it. So it's possible.
Could also just be Sukkot. That could also just be the sign.
Is
The
fullness of
faith,
him dwelling with us.
Yeah, because that then gives the peace
Yes.
as well.
Peace, righteousness, him walking with us, him establishing his Torah,
The house.
because that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
overlapping, right? So we will be celebrating Shabbat. We'll be talking about an eternal priesthood. You will be talking about the Davidic king. You will be talking about the Ruach living with you, and there will be complete shalom and righteousness running through it. So all of these things are going to be encompassing, and we're all going to be gathered into one place.
Talking about the spear of Pinchas, will be ruling and reigning with a rod of iron.
No one can do it.
Right. Okay, you guys have any questions about this insanity?
It's marvelous.
More.
Nice.
Happiness?
I just want to add one thing to Paul's,
Yeah.
I think she brought up earlier. Something I've thought about is, people are quick to say, Yeshua came to fulfill the law. That means he came to abolish the law or get rid of it.
Mhm.
Show me, because according to Deuteronomy 18, false prophet, if Yeshua came to do away with the law, show me in Torah where there's a prophecy that says he'll do that. Because we can look at every prophecy and say, okay, he was crucified, he was taken out of the city, he was born in Bethlehem, he was from the tribe of Judah, all of that.
That's all.
But you will not find one prophecy that says he will come to take away Torah of the law.
Yeah, that, yeah, you identify him as a false prophet, so if you're not practicing, then it's a problem, yes? Alright, prayer time is every time?
So if you can show me that, then I will stop.
No, no, I don't.